Hi, welcome to Christian Talk. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Eric Thompson. On today's podcast, we're going to do a look at how much involvement should Christ followers have in politics, in the government. We just had the 47th president sworn into office here in the United States. And so the question now is, what do we do? What do people of faith do now that we wanted a president whose agenda and campaign promises were based around really the advancing of principles that Christians would typically support, would address this godlessness of transgender affirming care, the mutilation of children, telling children you were a boy, but you were born in a girl's body, and this whole confusion, depression. So there's a lot of things that the Republican Party promised, and so now it looks like they're starting to already advance those. And since the news is inundated with lawsuit, 11th hour, charges against one guy, and everybody's kind of just dark side of Washington D.C. is underway. What do we do though? What should Christ followers do? Do Christians have a moral or a biblical obligation to participate in the government? Now you can go all kinds of searches and churches, and you're going to get different views, but here is where we're coming from at Christian Talk, as someone who just goes through the Bible. The primary calling that Christ followers have, the Great Commission, is to go make disciples of the nations. The reason why that makes sense and goes along with being saved out of darkness because of the love and the grace in the mercy of God, is that we are to love our neighbor as ourself. And though there's a compulsion, like Paul said, I am indebted to the Greeks, to the Gentiles, to the Jews, because I'm a child of God. I've been set free. So I feel like I just feel compelled to share, to go out, and there's like an indebtedness so they can have the opportunity. They need to hear the gospel. That was what Paul was feeling internally. So if we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves, we're supposed to contend for righteous causes. We are to hold people in the church accountable if they go outside of the scriptures. We're to walk in step with the Spirit. Then if we live in a country that's a constitutional republic that allows us to, at the local level and state level, elect representatives that will go to either the local mayor, to his office, or to the state assembly, or to the state governorship, or to the national United States Capitol. Those representatives are supposed to speak for our will, our wishes. Thus, if we the church puts in people that fear God, then they will pass laws that will help our neighbor. Right? That's where the Bill of Rights come in, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, all those, to protect religious liberties. Well, that was the Congress that passed the amendment to make sure that we could bring our concerns to the government, that we had free speech, which is enshrined in our Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. That we should be able to protect ourselves, Second Amendment. That we will not be illegally having the military or police could just come into our house and take the house or go through it without warrants. So we want to live in a moral and safe nation, and we're in a republic that allows us to have representatives that will argue that for us and vote for us. So then my question is, am I thinking correctly that if I want to help people the most, in the secular sense, outside of the gospel, if I want to help people and I'm in a republic, shouldn't I be involved in that process? Don't we have a duty? Now, there's some Christians that are going to argue, well, we don't want to have the church and the state intertwined, and some will falsely try to argue that there's a separation of church and state in the Constitution, which there is not. Thomas Jefferson wrote to some Baptists that this other denomination was not going, because even though they appeared to have the ear of most of the politicians, there wasn't going to be a national religion, so they could, keep worshiping. Things are going to be okay. Well, anti-godly historians and leftists have argued, well, no, that should be kind of a principle, a separation of church and state, and that's not what the founders wanted. The church, which you'll notice in most cities that have a lot of churches on each corner, there's less crime. There's more community. There's more giving. So, the idea that we don't want politics and the church too intertwined, I think, is kind of in our republic and the way things are set up, I don't think that's a good argument for Christians not being involved. I mean, think about it. If Christians didn't vote and they took away our speech and we were persecuted for worshiping, locked up, ending up like China, would that be the right thing to do if we're trying to advance the kingdom and help people? We should be quiet and let the government do. If the government goes corrupt and we get in prison, I just don't see that. And some will argue, well, God is sovereign and controls the heart of the king. Proverbs 21:1. So why should we risk compromising our gospel witness by involving with people that are so divisive? Others maintain Christians ought to be heavily involved. I'm going to go with a balanced, I think, biblical approach that the gospel applies to all areas of life. And the Bible in Romans 13 instructs us about the government and the political authority. So there is no scriptural mandate to avoid being involved with the government or with the state, or an admonition to be setting up a theocracy. So then this is why we need to be involved in evangelism, but also being involved in praying about, getting informed, and voting for people who will speak for us. That's the representatives. They speak for us. They're not supposed speaking for themselves. So why wouldn't we want our districts to have people speaking causes that will advance the kingdom and let us be free to do that? Some will say, well, if the Great Commission in 28:16 and 20 is to go focus on making disciples, then maybe we shouldn't be so concerned about the government in this world that's passing away. But the thing is, Christians are called to be stewards, and to bless people and use the opportunities given by God, our time, talent, and resources, riches. Well, then why wouldn't we? So in Romans 13:1 through 7, Paul describes the governing authorities as, listen to this, ministers of God. And they're responsible for administering civil justice. Well, if they're ministers of God and they are supposed to be ensuring godly, fair, and balanced justice, then that means that a sovereign God who moved on the hearts of people to come to this nation called the United States, and then the people he put in place as he lifts up kings and takes down kings, like it says in Daniel, then he chose, as sovereign, a government that was based on biblical foundations. Genesis 9, God provides general authorization for actions against murderers, right? Well, then our government's job should be, if somebody kills somebody, murders somebody, then the justice would be capital punishment, right? Well, in the Old Testament, Joseph and Daniel served as foreign administrators. Joseph was actually the second most powerful man in Egypt. And he helped save the land and save his family, Jacob's family, which would become Israel in the Promised Land following the Exodus 400 years later. Esther, she was used by God for a time as this to save Israel, the Jews, from being exterminated. Jeremiah, the prophet, was used to instruct the king that the Babylonians were coming and that they should seek God. So if God is using people, if he's lifting people up into political positions, then there's really no way that to avoid some involvement even today with true Christians and with the government. So why not be prayed up, talking about it and working together for the most good for people? That is why I think Christians should be involved in politics. The good that can be done, right, in limiting and prayerfully ending abortion, which Roe v. Wade was overturned because the Christians were involved in the process, ending euthanasia, supporting families, and so they would stay married and their children would be raised by the mom and dad and they were not put into foster care. There's a lot of things that we can do. We can help the homeless. We can hold the government accountable because we love our neighbors. So we want to make sure there's resources from the tax revenue to help the neighbors. Even Jesus, when they asked his disciples, is he going to pay the tax, the Roman tax for entering? Well, Jesus didn't say, we have nothing to do with government. He said, go down there, go down. There's going to be the coin for the taxes will be in the fish's mouth. Take it out and go pay our taxes. This is why the more that we are involved prayerfully at the local level, right, then we will do good at the local level, which will then go out to be a national blessing. But even during Jesus' ministry, some people were trying to make him to be the religious leader, but he was defaulting to his purpose for coming. Our purpose here, as we wait for the return of Jesus Christ, is to do good. And the way we can do good on our day-to-day lives through prayer, through fellowship, and reading God's word and attending healthy churches. But we can also then extend to even outside the church to those who are hurting by to make sure that those who represent us as Christians from the city to the state to the national level speak and promote our causes, then more good will be done in the United States. I mean, think about it. What if we just set back? What if the Christians set back? I already mentioned this, but I want to just kind of sit on this a little bit more before we're done. What if the founders, the population when they were demanding in New York and Virginia, hey, you guys, you did the Constitution, but we really need more protections. What if the people just sat quiet and said, you know what, we don't really need to be too involved? Well, because the people were involved and they ensured that the people that were ratifying who just ratified the Constitution would also put additional protections in, then if they hadn't done that, the anti-federalists, we wouldn't have the First Amendment, which says that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. By us being involved, Christ followers, good things can happen in our government. By prayerfully putting the right people in office and in the judgeships, justice, equal justice under the law, sentencing will be just, and that is for God's glory. We do not want to become too attached to a political person's persona. I agree with that argument. We should be known as Christ followers who vote and hold the people we vote for accountable, but we do not want to be affiliated with the Christian political right or whatever these causes are. That is, I do not believe that's biblical. Our purpose is to finish our race strong, which is why if you want to get more information on me, head over to my other website, finishtherace.com, finishtherace.com. This is why we want to be engaged in our individual walks. We want to run our races with our eyes fixed on the author and the perfecter of our faith, Jesus Christ. But let's do as much good as possible. Let's hand off our country as the next generations, hand them a country where the Bill of Rights are solidified and where people can worship freely and people can say freely what's on their heart as God moves on them to say, stop aborting the baby, stop mutilating the children, stop stealing, stop doing free drugs or legalizing drugs. Pray outside of abortion clinics without being arrested, like this silly thing that's been happening to people praying and then they end up in prison. No. Let's do this. I am a Reformed conservative person, most closely aligned to Calvinism. But I, no way in a million years, believe that people like my theological bent should sit and just let God sovereignly do all the work and we just sit there. I don't need to share the gospel because God will take care of that because he's already sovereignly predestined them. I don't need to be involved in politics because God, it's his country, it's his world. We're passing through. We're not even supposed to love this world. We're not even part of it, so I'm going to do nothing. Then why was the Great Commission given if we're just supposed to sit here with God sovereignly doing all things? So, again, should Christians be involved in politics? Absolutely. Should Christians be connected with a secular government political party to where there's like an integration? I'd say absolutely not. Yes, if we individually and maybe as a church or as a group want to pray and bless and support a politician who's going to speak for us, that's one thing. But not a religious right. Because even a lot of the politicians who claim to be Christians, if you look at their records, they're passing laws and voting for things that are abhorrent to people of faith. But yet they will see you on Sunday or tell you that they go to church. because they're not. Some will even argue, well, you didn't elect a pastor. I'm a politician. But you promised me that you were a Christian and you were going to pursue policies that would be righteous and help people. Yeah, but no, so it's a messy thing. This is why I think we need to be involved, but in a limited way. Our purpose is to love people for God, to love our families, to be involved in the church, to be prepared to share the gospel. And when we do these things, then God will get glory even in our actions involved with the political system. Because, yes, sovereignly, He is lifting up the presidents, taking down the presidents, lifting up the kings, taking down the kings. But just like the gospel goes forth, and we take it in obedience to the Great Commission, we should be involved in advancing God's causes from a biblical point of view for His sovereign will, for His glory. I believe at the local and the political realm also, though not as important as the gospel by any means. God still gets glory when His people are the light and the salt of the world. Thank you so much for going through this podcast with me. Please share with your friends and family. Check out my other website, finishtherace.com. And I do want to let you guys know that a lot of people have been missing church and stuff lately because of the sniffles, because of the flu or other sicknesses. And I found this doctor during COVID who came up with a protocol, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko. You know, you might have heard about ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, and all that. He came up with a kit. He came up with this protocol that thousands of people took and prevented them from needing to be hospitalized during COVID. And because of that, President Trump's team back then contacted Zelenko, and he told him about zinc and the other things that's in his protocol, and President Trump said he took it, and he was able to get healthy when he had it. So Dr. Zelenko has other products. One is called Z-Flu. I say fight the flu with Z-Flu. He has one called Z-Night. Helps you sleep and detox your body while building up your immunity. He's got the Z-Stack, the first protocol product, which supports your body's natural immune system. So I think it's a good thing to stay fully, to try to be have your natural immune system maxed out as much as possible instead of getting sick and then fighting. At that point, it's also good to have the Zelenko standard, the kits, in case China, which unfortunately controls about 90% of our pharmaceuticals, doesn't in the future decide to not supply them if we have another pandemic or something hit. So as we're finishing up the podcast, let me recommend you head over to the website. It's Get the letter Z Stack, STACK.com. That's for Zelenko. GetZstack.com. Look at the different products he has, including the Z-Flu. So you fight the flu with Z-Flu. And check out the other products for helping you with sleeping, detoxing, or just get the standard Z-Stack, which is what was so effective during COVID-19. And check out our website, finishtherace.com. And lastly, please share this podcast with your friends and family. Invite people to follow the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating on Spotify if you feel led to, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for listening to Christian Talk. My name's Eric Thompson.